Hello, hello. I warmly welcome you. I'm David, and today we're going to look at a message for you, from the universe, from the cards, from energy. So this will be quite a universal message for really everyone. So we'll see what the universe wants to tell you regarding this situation, this relationship, or anything that's currently appearing in your life. So I warmly invite you, think about this situation, think about this person, and I'll try to extract as much information as possible from this message, as many specifics as possible, and we'll check what signal the universe is giving you right now, what the cards are giving you, and what will be best for you in this moment. So I warmly invite you to listen. If this video found you, it means this message is for you. So let's start with the question, what does this person or situation really need from you right now? Let's see. The Three of Swords. Quite interesting, an interesting start. The Three of Swords with quite a strong card, quite one that, would seem not easy. So this person or this situation needs something from you that hurts. It needs truth. Not the smoothed over one, not the diplomatic one, but the one that goes through the heart like a blade. Perhaps for a long time you've been circling around something that you both feel, but no one has said it out loud. Or maybe you yourself are holding inside words that should have been said long ago because you're afraid. They weren't said because you're afraid that, for example, they'll hurt someone. Except the problem is that the Three of Swords may show that they hurt anyway, but through silence, through things left unsaid, through suspension. This card says directly, here someone is suffering because there's a lack of confrontation with what is. So this isn't a situation where you can continue pretending that everything is okay. The Three of Swords is pain that has already happened. It's not in front of you, it's more inside you. Something was said or done, and it left a mark. This person or situation needs you to stop protecting yourself or them from this pain, because it exists anyway. So avoiding it doesn't heal it, it only prolongs the agony. This is the moment when you need to look at the wound and say, yes, it hurts, and we have to go through this. However, there's something else in this card, a kind of loneliness in experiencing it. Maybe this person feels alone with all of this, or maybe you've closed yourself off and are experiencing something in isolation. So this situation needs courage from you, for you to open up to what's closed. It's not about dramatic confessions, it's about honesty, about saying what's on your heart, even if your voice breaks while doing so, because as long as it's not named, there's no chance for any healing. So the card is very clear. This is about breaking the silence and accepting pain as part of the process. This is the starting point, but this is only the first card, so take it easy. It doesn't mean the whole spread. Rather, this first initial signal. So let's see what shows up next and what it looks like more specifically. And we have the Nine of Swords, so we're continuing, damn it. Quite an unfortunate streak, but that could also mean that perhaps the end of this spread will be more cheerful. We'll see. However, it's worth waiting. The Nine of Swords comes in and somewhat deepens this image in a very intense way, because it connects with the Three of Swords into one message about torment that has been going on for, definitely too long. If the Three speaks of pain that is real and requires naming, then the Nine shows that this pain has grown in your head to monstrous proportions. So this person or this situation needs something from you that you're not giving yourself right now, which is they need you to stop spiraling, because what's happening in your head at night, those thoughts that won't let you sleep, those scenarios you're building in the darkness, they're worse than reality. Much worse. The Three of Swords was real pain, but the Nine says that you took that pain and multiplied it by fear, by imagination, by all the worst versions of events. So together these cards paint a picture of someone who can't sleep because of something that hasn't been said. Because you see, the Three was screaming for truth, for breaking the silence, and instead of doing that, you shut yourself away with your thoughts and let them devour you. So this situation needs you not to have another sleepless night analyzing what that person meant, or what you could have done better in that situation, or what will go wrong. It just needs you to get out of that bed full of swords and take one simple step. Talk, ask, say, because right now your mind is your biggest enemy, not that person and not that situation. It seems. There's also something I must say directly here. These two cards speak of paralyzing fear. So you know something needs to be done, you feel it in your bones, but the fear of pain is so great that you'd rather suffer in silence than risk confrontation. Except this silent torment isn't a safe haven, it's a trap. So this person or situation needs you to see that the worst that can happen is already happening right now in your head. Reality is almost certainly milder than what you're imagining, and that's obviously good news in this case, right? So this also shows perhaps an encouragement not to wind yourself up too much, although it's not easy, but the cards are speaking very strongly about this here. In the meantime, I invite you to arcanemoonshop.com. If you feel the need for a private reading, if you feel you have questions you'd like to ask the cards, I invite you to arcanemoonshop.com. There you'll find my private readings. Meanwhile, returning to the message, let's look at the third card, which is the last one in the context of the first question in this spread, and it is Strength. Also quite telling, because Strength in this position points to such a response to everything the previous cards showed, and closes this question in a way that should make you pause longer, because after all this pain of the Three of Swords, and after this torment of the spiral of thoughts from the Nine, it seems that this situation doesn't need aggression from you, doesn't need an outburst, doesn't need door slamming or ultimatums. It needs something much harder from you, such gentle, calm, conscious strength, the kind that doesn't shout but also doesn't give in, the kind that speaks the truth, but not to wound, only to heal. Strength in tarot isn't muscles, it's taming the beast within yourself. And that beast in your case is precisely this fear and these uncontrolled thoughts that were eating you up. So together these three cards form a very coherent story, and this story goes like this. There is pain, there is some wound, or something like that, which is generally tormenting. There is something that requires saying out loud, and instead of doing that, you might have closed yourself off in your head, and somewhere there you're tormenting yourself, building walls from the worst scenarios. And what this person or situation really needs from you is for you to approach it with inner calm and courage of the heart, not of the mind. Strength says you have everything within you that you need to get through this. You don't need to be perfectly prepared. You don't need to have a ready speech. You need to have an open heart and patience with yourself and of course the other side or situation. Well, finishing this first question, this card also speaks of something very important in the context of this situation, about perseverance and about how love is stronger than fear. Of course, this isn't about romantic love. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic love, but love as an attitude of approaching another person with care instead of armor. So this person may need you to be present with them, non-reactively, non-defensively, not closed off. They need your softness, not your armor. So perhaps this is also the direction that's worth choosing here, along with this communication, right? Or at least try it, and see what happens, do something different, and expect different results than before. That's how I would summarize it. That's the conclusion I would draw. So let's continue. My second question, which is the question about what remains hidden from you, or what you don't want to see at this moment. And we start with the Knight of Swords, so we're returning back to the energy of the sword symbol. The Knight of Swords is different from the rest of the swords in that it makes things clear. What you don't want to see, or what remains hidden from you, has something to do with violence, haste, or ruthlessness in action. So this could be someone in your environment who makes decisions faster than they think, who acts impulsively and doesn't look back at who they hurt along the way. But maybe you yourself have this action, and that's precisely what's hardest to accept, because the Knight of Swords, in the position of what's hidden, suggests that somewhere in this situation, there's energy that rushes forward without reflection, and you either don't see it or don't want to admit that it exists. This knight is someone who is right, or at least is convinced they are, and in the name of this rightness is ready to cut without anesthesia. What may be hidden here is that in this situation someone isn't fighting fair. Someone uses words as weapons, someone attacks before asking, and someone reacts before feeling. And what you're missing is the fact that this energy doesn't lead to a solution, it leads to destruction. You may be defending this person from themselves. Maybe you're excusing their behavior. Maybe you're telling yourself that, well, that's just their character, that they didn't mean anything bad. But this card says there's something in this that you're closing your eyes to. Because if you really saw this ruthlessness in full light, you would have to draw the conclusion that there would be no leniency. There would be no excuse that it's just their character, that it will change, that now it will be better. That wouldn't exist. And there's one more significant dimension to this knight. This is a character who doesn't stop to feel. He thinks, plans, acts, but doesn't feel. What may be hidden from you is the fact that in this situation, someone has completely cut themselves off from emotions and functions exclusively on an intellectual level. So it looks like strength. It looks like self-confidence, but underneath there's an escape from what really hurts. So if this is about you, this card says directly, you don't see how much you're rationalizing something that should be experienced with the heart, not the head. That's how I would put it. Alright, we have the Page of Pentacles in the 5th position. And this is, for me, a card that the pages primarily show quite young energy, quite fresh. That's how I always associate pages. This is a court figure. Here the picture starts to change into something more concrete, because these two cards together speak of something you don't see, that somewhere right next to you, something new is being born, something small, something at an initial stage, and you may be too busy with this whole mental storm of the night, this rush, this analysis, this reacting, that you're completely missing it. The Page of Pentacles is the energy of a beginning, a new possibility, a new path, maybe even a new person, maybe a new financial or professional opportunity, maybe a new way of looking at something that seemed closed to you. And this is precisely what remains hidden from you. Not because someone is hiding or concealing it from you, but because you're looking, well, I would say in the wrong direction. The Knight of Swords rushes forward with a sword in hand. He's focused on conflict, on the problem, on what needs to be solved here and now. And at this time, the page stands quietly to the side and holds in their hands something valuable, something tangible, something real. And you may not notice it because you put all your attention into what hurts, what is difficult, what requires immediate reaction. Meanwhile, this hidden thing, this chance, this opportunity, this new beginning requires completely different energy. It requires patience, humility, readiness to learn from scratch. Look, it's a student. This is someone who doesn't pretend to know everything, who approaches things with curiosity and openness. And you in this situation behave like a knight, as if you already knew everything, as if there wasn't, as if there was no time to stop and see what is already under your nose. So together, these two cards speak of something very important, of the contrast between acting and building, because the knight acts, reacts, attacks or flees, and the page builds, plants a seed, lays the first stone. What you don't want to see may be the fact that this situation doesn't need another fight or another conversation full of tension, because it rather needs a conversation, but not full of tension or another quick move. It needs you to stop and see that there's something new trying to reach you, something material, something concrete, something that has growth potential, but only if you give it time and space. And you may not be doing this, because you're pulled into a whirlwind of actions that basically lead nowhere. Of course, it's not that I'm oversimplifying here and saying, well, you don't see it, why don't you see it? Of course it's not that simple, and obviously in life it's not as simple as in the cards. However, remember that this is just a signal. This reading is meant to be a certain thought, a certain message that is supposed to signal something to you, be some kind of sign and hit on some specific situation you're currently thinking about. So it's not that literal either. I hope this is quite understandable, and no one here will be offended by me, because I'm only trying to convey what the cards communicate so very concretely and brutally. However, I think this is more about the bigger picture, and the Three of Wands in the 3rd position for that second question, meaning a card that for me is like a lens that makes everything clear, because this card, together with the Knight and Page, creates an image of someone, an image that speaks of something you perhaps should have seen long ago. Meaning your ships have already sailed, something has already been set in motion, some process is already underway, and you perhaps are behaving as if you were still standing on the shore, wondering whether it's even worth going into the water. The Three of Wands is a card of expansion, vision, looking at the horizon, and waiting for the effects of what has already been done. And this is exactly what remains hidden from you, that certain things are already in motion and you don't need to push them, control them, or rescue them. So in combination with all the previous cards, a story emerges of someone who is very focused, indeed so very focused on the problem, on the fight, on solving and analyzing, that they don't see that life has already answered. The Knight of Swords rushed with a sword in hand, seeking an enemy. The Page of Pentacles stood quietly, with a new chance in their hands. And now the Three of Wands says directly, lift your head and look at the horizon, because something is coming that you worked for or desired, and you don't see it because you're turned away, gazing at your wounds, your perhaps fears, which is natural, but still it's worth at this moment lifting your head and noticing also what is good. Sometimes we get stuck like an old record and see only the bad things. Especially actually now in this winter time, it can be such a worse time. There is less light, which means that, for example, we notice more bad things, we have a worse mood, so it also means that obviously we have less positive thinking, but of course I'm sending as many of those positive thoughts, those good vibrations as possible. Because that's kind of the message of this spread, right? That there are quite a lot of bad thoughts here, a lot of bad scenarios like that, which are accumulating somewhere in your head, but reality is much better, much more positive. So maybe it's worth putting down the sword and actually trying more in the way that the Strength card says, which is with calmness, but with conviction. To notice what the Page of Pentacles shows, which is some new opportunity that's coming to you. Perhaps in the coming weeks, some new proposal for work, a project, maybe a trip will appear, something that will be completely new, fresh, and of course very positive for you. However, this is a spread that shows that the answer to your question, or questions, or generally the answer, is already on its way. However, you obviously must allow yourself to see it, and that is very much the punchline of this message here. So thank you very much for listening to the end. I invite you to arcanemoonshop.com if you need a private reading. If you have any question for the cards, that's where you can ask it. And in the meantime, I wish you a wonderful day, and I'm sending lots of positive, good energy, all the best. Until we hear from each other. Hey,